in a second. I do want to pause, Stugotz, because the news just came in, and I don't know how you experienced this, but to me it felt like a punch in the stomach to learn that Dikembe Mutombo, a really effervescent personality who was a bit of a pioneer, really, out of Georgetown, just sort of this pipeline in Georgetown of big guys that went Ewing, Mourning, and Mutombo. And then Mutombo gets to the NBA, and he's more colorful than either one of the other two, brooding giants who came out of Georgetown. The offensive game he wasn't the player on offense that Mourning and Ewing were.
No.
But as a personality, he was so much fun. To hear that he has died at the age of 58 of brain cancer, 3 years older than me, when I really do associate Mutombo, Stugotz, with life, with living large, with being somebody who was not just an ambassador on behalf of helping the game become more international, but with a single finger, he had more personality than so many players in that sport when he would block shots and he would tell you, no, no, no. And anyone who knows what Mutombo was off the court knows how giving and fun he was. To have that big of a life extinguished so young, landed wrong, felt wrong, and just seemed to me uncommonly heavy for someone I've only talked to a handful of times, but had a personality that sort of jumped off of your television screen, had learned our language, okay? So he was always doing all of his interviews in his second language, doing it through
did them well, by the way.
Yes, excellently, right. through a heavy accent, and allowed us, Stugotz, when you say did them well, just so that you understand how difficult, the degree of difficulty was on how it is that Mutombo achieved stardom as a defensive player and as a life force. Think of how you have trouble connecting with even someone like Jokic or Doncic when they're trying to introduce you to who they are in a second language. It can become difficult to feel like you know those players, that you feel like you're rooting beyond the basketball for someone whose personality is something that you like to be around.
It's usually uncomfortable because, as you pointed out, they're doing it in their second language. Mutombo started off that way. It wasn't uncomfortable because he was so full of life. I honestly had no idea that he was sick then, but you're right. We lost a great player on the court. We lost a great person off the court. He did a lot for a lot of people in need off the court. He was fantastic.
And forgive me because we're just getting the news now, okay? So I don't know that I can properly eulogize him. I'm only doing the eulogy in a way that is fresh because the feeling is fresh. So, Roy, if you can look up for me just some of the big charitable work that he did, because he I don't think it's a stretch. I know we tend to overinflate people sometime in eulogies, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that he was a pioneer in terms of bridging the gulf between here and international basketball, while meeting us where we were in his, I don't even think it was his second language, actually. If I had to guess, my guess would be, as educated as he was, that English wasn't even his second language. It might have been his third. But he did big work that I don't have the details on because the news is just coming in now. So we will more properly eulogize him, because I'm just talking fresh off of the feeling of just, I don't even know how to explain this because it doesn't happen to me very often, Stugotz, with celebrity, where I feel like I'm punched in the gut because I feel like I know someone a little bit better than I actually do just because of how big his personality was, not because of any kind of interaction that I was personally having with him a great deal.
You just felt like you got to know him throughout the course of time because he was warm, because that's the way he kind of presented himself Roy will get us the charity work, but it is vast. It is a lot. He has won many, many awards.
I mean, he was an ambassador.
All the charitable work that he did.
And
yes.
I'm not familiar with the details, but that is a good word to use because I do associate him with a warmth that I don't mean this. I really don't mean this as any kind of disparagement of Mourning or Ewing, but this was very much of a pipeline for what was coming out of Georgetown. What came out of Georgetown with John Thompson. It wasn't just the coach, John Thompson, who was viewed as a giant who wasn't seen as warm. It was Iverson. It was Mourning. It was Ewing. These were not – warmth is not what was being given off there. And Mutombo learned under those –
toughness was.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
right.
for sure.
Yes.
Menace. And
yes.
and people it wasn't Georgetown wasn't a cuddly program. And look, there's some racial undertones on all of this, and those were men whose defiance was sort of earned by how it is that America treated them. But Mutombo didn't seem to have any of that coming from the same place and the same Georgetown family. Didn't seem to be anything much other than warm in a way that people could feel.
Some of his charity work includes his own foundation, the Dikembe Mutombo Foundation, which he started in '97, and it was to help improve the quality of life in the Congo and to give them education and better health. He named a hospital after his mom, Biamba Marie Mutombo, a 170-bed hospital. He opened the Samuel Mutombo Institute for Science and Entrepreneurship. He has a Mutombo Coffee Company, which aimed to close the gender gap in African coffee production. And he's a part of many boards for the Centers of Disease Control Foundation, Special Olympics International, United States Fund for UNICEF. So, yeah, he's been pretty big in the charitable aspect of his life.
As was Mourning, by the way.
Yes.
This is something that was important to all of them at Georgetown to help some people who were disadvantaged. Again, we will regroup and try to talk about this with a little more detail because the news is just coming in now. And I can't really explain to you beyond what it is that I've already explained why it is that this has landed on me this way. But it's because he was such a different personality. It's just it's an unusual story.
Well, it's too soon. He was young, and it feels too soon, and he was very, very young. And I had no idea. I'm a bit shocked because I did not know he was dealing with brain cancer. And so this is it's a very sad day for a very amazing player and person. As Roy pointed out, all the charity work, Dan. But this is one of the great players, one of the great defensive players of all time in the NBA. And so we lost a great person and a great player today in Dikembe Mutombo.
The upset that the Nuggets pulled over the Supersonics, when you saw him in just an immense amount of joy near the free throw line while he's holding that basketball at the end of the series, that's what I'm gonna take from it.
There are two images that you associate with him, right? It's the wagging of the finger whenever he would block a shot, because Stugotz is right. He was one of the great defensive players of all time. But the joy in that moment when he's on the floor and it's a great upset and he is holding the ball and you just see on his face just a sheer delight that you associate with how big his personality is.
I honor him every single day, Dan, with the finger wag. When someone tries to cut in front of me on I-95, they try to get into that lane. There's not enough room, and I speed up. I don't let them in. I wag my finger at them like Mutombo just blocked a shot. I do it every single – I'm going to do it today. In fact, everyone do it when they're driving around South Florida today to honor the great Dikembe Mutombo.
Why do you feel the need to lie every second of your life?
That's what I do. I've told you that for 15 years. Lying is what I do.
I also, I don't know Dikembe personally. I feel like maybe he wouldn't be as aggressive a driver, and he wouldn't be wagging his finger at people. He just let them in. So you're not actually honoring him because you're not behaving as he would be behaving.
Well, It's my way of blocking someone. I can't do what Mutombo did on a court, and so what I can do is block you from getting in my lane. Mm-hmm. And when I do, I wag the finger.
And you think he'd like this?
Yeah, you're honoring him. I
do.
think I
in a
think
way
it's
that's
I
not
do.
fitting to him,
I do.
probably.
It's a little too soon for that kind of lightheartedness around what it is that we're talking about. And you think you're honoring him by making South Florida traffic even worse and meaner than it already is.